Hi, welcome to Guru Grit. My name is Monika, and this is a place for learning, self-empowerment, self-knowledge, and spiritual pursuits. So today's video is quite special because I already did a book series on TikTok on Abraham-Hicks' first ever book, written in 1987, called A New Beginning. Guidebook for Joyous Survival. Joyous survival. What wonderful words to stick together. But in any case, it's an amazing book. As you can see, I've done a number on it, and I've read it so that you don't have to. And it's a phenomenal piece of work, and I'd love to go through the core tenets of their teachings, which honestly haven't changed in 34, 35 years. So it's just very reassuring and very touching to have a teacher not change. Like, all their teachings are exactly the same because the principles apply to everyone, no matter who you are or where you are. It's the same for wherever you are in the whole of existence. I don't just mean here on Earth. So naturally, starting with Jerry and Esther Hicks came into this work by accident. They explain in the book. They just went to a friend who did channeling. They heard about Jane Roberts, and they went to a woman who channeled an entity called Theo. And then she turned to Esther and said, "They're telling you to meditate. Someone wants to speak to you." So she meditated for 8 months, 15 minutes a day. And then she started to feel sensation, and she didn't know what it was. And Abraham was trying to spell its name with the tip of her nose. And then she realized that something was trying to speak through her. And the way that it happened was that she was so receptive, and her husband was so curious, that she became the catalyst to answering all of his questions. So now we have Jerry and Esther Hicks. Jerry has departed the earthly plane, but he's still around her and supporting this work. And prior to discovering Abraham, Jerry learned everything he could, and he talks about it a lot in the book. It's really, really fascinating. He learned everything he could about spiritism and all those things. And he was a big fan of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, to the extent that he actually found the first edition in an old bookstore that wasn't published by the publisher because they were afraid that people would be freaked out by words like vibration. So they took everything out. They censored everything out to do with basically what Abraham talks about today. But he got his hands on it. So I mean, if you can track something down like that with such surgical precision, anything is possible. So naturally they summoned Abraham, who's here to teach us, which is just a collective of energies, of all that is, as they say, and they just answer questions. So this is what I quite like. The back of the book is live Q&A from their seminars. They've typed up some of the answers to some questions like, how do I find a mate, or what does this mean, or what does that mean, who is Jesus, etc. But the first half of the book is about surviving Earth. So the first thing they mention, of course, is that we all chose to be here, and nothing is an accident. So if you don't know, I'm a practicing astrologer. I love astrology. It helped me make sense of life. Just this morning I was reading the first ever astrology book that I got for my 13th birthday. I've been fascinated by it since I was 12 years old. And they've confirmed everything I've always thought, which is that you choose your chart. Your birth is not an accident. You choose the first moment you draw your breath, and in the circumstances under which you draw it. So you choose your parents, you choose the country, the name, what your nose is gonna look like, your eyelashes, everything. It's because you intended to come here and you intended to expand. So never ever feel sorry for yourself. There's nothing to feel sorry about. Next is, how do you actually create? What is the formula for the creation of your reality? Well, thoughts become things. This is what they talk about. But they have a more recent book, published in the 2000s, I believe, called The Astonishing Power of Your Emotions. And that was actually the first Abraham book I ever bought and read. This was wonderfully gifted to me by my dear, dear sibling, my beautiful sister, who tracked it down. And she tracked down part 2. There's a part 2 as well. So I'm going to do that one next. And she gave them to me, so God bless you. But, they explain that when you think a thought and then you infuse it with feeling, which is really high vibration and very intense, and one of the reasons that Earth is the place to incarnate, it's the most fun, it's the most exciting, is our capacity for extreme emotion. We have capacity for pain, low lows, and very, very high highs. And though it doesn't sound exciting when you're in absolute agony and you're heartbroken and you're crushed and you're depressed and melancholy, it is a novelty. It is a novelty to the, compared to other forms of incarnation that are not always physical or able to feel as we are and able to create as we are. So what can you create now that we know how you create? Absolutely anything. This is not a world of limitation. That Abraham always says, you're so free you can choose bondage. You're so free you can choose to believe that you're not. That's how free you are. That's actually quite amazing. And speaking of, creation and freedom and limitation and all these things, language is so important for many reasons. Words are spells. I wrote an article about that, words casting spells, but also that when you produce sound. So I'm a sound person, I use my voice, I project my voice in a very particular way when I do a reading, and I receive sound. So, what you call yourself, what you say to yourself is very important. So I hear a lot of people saying that affirmations don't work. Of course they don't. Nothing works if you do it mindlessly. You just make manifest more mindlessness. But anything done mindfully with intent, which comes from the heart, that must come. It absolutely must happen. There's no, as Abraham says, there's not a shred of evidence to the contrary. So now, if you can create anything and you're absolutely free, what are some of the methods that they give us? So if you want to know actual quotes, I've made some videos about that on YouTube, and my TikTok I did every single chapter except one chapter I left out for very good reason. I'll talk about it a little bit here. But they give the process of pivoting. So they give a really bad example. They say, let's say you're homeless, you're living under a bridge, and every day you wake up hungry and people don't like you, so as they walk by you, they kick you. So how do you go from there to living in a comfortable place and having money and a job? Well, you can quantum leap overnight, but if your vibration hasn't prepared it, you'll probably just crash. Kind of like, people who win the lottery, they're not in the mindset of wealth, so they just lose all their money, or they mismanage it pretty much. But you pivot in increments, incrementally. So if you're single and you've been single for a long time, and I get so many, I actually never realized how many people really wanted love until I started doing this work, and how disconnected from love they really felt. And they write and they'll say, I have a crush on someone, and they're really well known on Instagram, so they will never talk to me. But I've also gotten messages from people with the blue check mark on their profiles, and they'll say, but how do I meet someone? My world is so small. And when you realize that it's the same thing, you're both perceiving limitation in different ways. Someone's saying, I'm too famous. Everyone knows me for the wrong stuff. They know me for what I do. They don't know me for who I am, and they actually maybe don't have an interest, and it just feels like disingenuous, and it really bothers me. And they feel lonely. Like I think Adele said, it's funny, the more famous you become, the smaller your world grows, because, well, it doesn't grow, it shrinks, because no one really knows you. And you can say the same thing about someone who has a crush on someone with status or influence, and they're saying, but I'm just a nobody. It's like, that's not true. You all want love. So if you match up on the vibration of being known for who you really are, and you're going to attract someone who wants to know you for who you really are, regardless of all the external stuff. It's actually inconsequential. It's nothing. Like Neville Goddard says, facts overflow the world. That means absolutely nothing. This is a fact, that's a fact. So what? You create whatever you want. It means absolutely nothing. So in that case, if you really wanted love, first of all, like Neville Goddard says, I just have to inject this because it's my favorite line of his. He says, never go looking for love. Those who go looking for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. So if you want money, never go complaining about money or looking for money. You only make manifest your own lack or poverty, etc. So you wake up single, your bed is cold, it's vast, it's alone, no one to eat breakfast with, drink coffee with, and it bums you out. The first 10-15 seconds that you wake up, do not allow that reality to come crashing into your consciousness. As soon as your eyes flutter open, you have a few seconds of no momentum, and your mind is really impressionable. So just take a few breaths and keep your mind empty. And if you'd like to say a few things to yourself, then you can, I would say for affirmations, not to force yourself. So you're not gonna be like, I'm happily married, I'm blissfully and happily, if you're not blissfully and happily married, and if you don't believe that you will be. But if you can believe it's a good day, and anything can happen today, and God multiplies my good exceedingly, well, tell yourself some neutral, good feeling things that will get you into the mood for love, okay? So that's how you pivot anything. And you incrementally will find yourself going on dates, and people will just send people to you, okay? It'll just kind of happen. Same goes for money. Somebody will just pull your name from the ether and go, I remember this person, John, or, Cinderella or whoever, and then they'll suggest you for an interview and get you hired. So another thing then is segment intending. So segment intending, and I'm actually very good at this with one thing. It's so funny. I have no resistance to parking really far and walking to wherever I'm going, because I like to walk. I walk every single night. I'm nocturnal, so I enjoy walking. And it just so happens, because I have no resistance and I've trained myself and I drive a lot, that I always get amazing parking spaces. So I can be going to, you know, a huge concert or something, it's gonna be packed. And even if I'm running late, if I'm relaxed enough and there's other people whose influence starts to agitate me just a little bit, my vibration will be the dominant vibration and it will always win out, and I will always get an amazing spot right like close to the door or something, or really convenient or really safe at the airport. I'm just fortunate, like just as even the last time I drove someone to the airport last week, exactly 9 days ago, they were like, oh my God, it's full. There's literally one space left in the lot. How are we gonna find it? And just as I intuitively turned, I saw someone back out, and I just went and took that spot in like 10 seconds. It was just nothing. So you segment intent. You get in your car, you say, oh yes, green lights, no waiting in line to pay, you know, the waiter's really friendly. Whatever you go to do, you take a few minutes before then. Even Reverend Ike used to teach this. He says, make smooth, beautiful, and perfect my way. Make smooth, beautiful, and perfect my way. So whatever you do, you're about to get on a call with your boss, you segment intend that it goes well. You visualize it, you affirm it, and you just do this all day, every day. One thing I would like to make a distinction about, they do discuss this as well in their seminar, the recordings. There's one coming up, I think October 2nd, they're doing live online, very excited for that, and in the books, which is most of the time with affirmations or visualizations, people will pick a scene. So you're happily married. So say you're, you know, someone who finds that your success kind of exploded, and so now you find it hard to meet people. And you think your world is small. You see the same people every day and you work with them and they're all taken or something. And so you think, okay, I'm going to visualize being perfectly happily married, and it's gonna get me into a good mood, and then that person has to come. But if you do the thing to get the thing, it doesn't come. You cannot outsmart the powers that be. It's an energy game. It's a game. Just if it bothers you, make friends with mercurial people and just learn to laugh about everything and not take it seriously, okay? Like court jesters, we just find the joy in whatever. We're energy brokers, is what I've come to do, is just laugh and spread joy. So think about it like this. If you think the thought to get into the mood, kind of like if you meditate to win the lottery, you'll never win the lottery. But if you're already in a good mood, if you can just find some way to put yourself in a good mood, watch, you know, fun-loving romantic comedies, read romance novels or whatever, music videos, anything that just makes you feel nice. Once you're already feeling nice, now is the time to visualize. Now is the time to claim what you desire, to write it out. But if you're writing to put yourself in the mood, it could just cause a bit of like, it's just a bit jarring. It's kind of like being put through an emotional cheese grater, because you feel exposed and it feels forced. So don't force intimacy. Don't force familiarity with a scene that you're not really familiar with. If you can't feel good and lovey-dovey when you're trying to attract love, feel neutral, okay? So that's what they teach specifically. They say don't do the visualization to feel love. Once you're feeling lovable, then think about it, and then it must come. Now, they obviously stress the importance of our creative power, and that nobody and nothing in all of existence, far beyond the reaches of our solar system, can create for you. It's not possible. The power of influence only exists through, you know, people in your surroundings. So let's say like when you're growing up as a child, your parents will influence you because you're receptive. And if you're unconscious, even now, you know, your lovers, your friends, your coworkers, whoever, because you're around them so much, you can get onto a train of thought and then have so much shared momentum that's kind of hard to get off that momentum. But they don't create for you. If you think they do, it's because you've allowed them to. So this is important, that they say one of the best things you could do is stop a conversation dead in its tracks. So if you're single and you're looking for love, you're unemployed looking for a job, and someone goes out for coffee with you and they're like, how did that date go? It bombed? Sucks. And they put that like horrific, you know, that horrific sort of expression, and it just, my best friend said, you know, I'm so happy and I'm dating, I'm having a nice time, and then every time my friends see me, they always say, oh, you'll find someone. And she just went, don't awe me, I'm happy, you know? But that's the best thing you can do, is just say, oh, like, thank you, no thank you. And then just withdraw yourself from that. So if you're really, really attuned, what you could do is stay in the conversation intellectually, but you'll feel a pinching off in your solar plexus, or like a neutrality. It just goes stale. So you don't let it into your spirit. I like to say I won't let that in my spirit. So I can listen to someone talk about the news, but I don't let that into my spirit. But it's taken years of training. When I was younger, I would just have to say, how's your dog? Did you get a husky? And just kind of have to like completely derail the conversation, because I couldn't stand to listen to, because I was so sensitive. It would hurt. It's like my ears would bleed. But you get better at it. So they said if people think it's really, really rude, that you just can't take it and you get up and you leave the room, if that is what you have to do to preserve your energy, then that's just what you have to do. Even if they call you on the phone and you're like, are you in a good mood? And he's like, well, actually, no, he broke up with me for the 5th time. Be like, call me when you're in a good mood, and just hang up the phone if that's what has to happen for you to feel better. But only in the beginning and only selectively, because then what happens is you make them the circumstance that has to change for you to feel better, and that's just not going to work. You're doing it backwards. So you have to influence your external reality. You can't expect it to change for you to feel better, and that includes world events, that includes the weather, that includes absolutely everything and anything under the sun, because you hold the power. But in the beginning, it is what it is. You want to eat dinner alone for a couple nights, or if your spouse is always cranky, then you just might have to lock yourself into a pantry and eat cookies out of a bag until they've cheered up or something. So, speaking of influence, we've covered power. What is the part of the book that I kind of left out, and why it's actually called Handbook for Joyous Survival, survival being kind of a strange word to choose, is because they go into great detail about the only thing that will pretty much happen on Earth that is beyond a human being's creative control. So there is set to be a series of events that are beyond our creative control. That means whether we like it or not, it must happen and it must come, because it's the Earth is a living organism, and it's about her realigning with herself. Okay, so she's going to reach a higher frequency, and she can't take everybody with her, and she can't take everything with her as well. So in that sense, what they suggest is then, they give some very practical advice, but let's use the example of you playing outside in your backyard with your nieces and nephews and family members and having a barbecue. And the next door neighbors are having a water balloon fight, okay? So someone chucks one over the fence, it's gonna hit somebody, and somebody's gonna get sprayed. But if you're in a really good mood, and it's gonna hurt, let's say it's gonna hurt like hell, okay? If you're in a really, really good mood, there's no way that is going to be you. Even if you're, very closely confined, even if you're stationary, if you just stood there like this, like that emoji, it can't touch you. It's not possible, because your vibration is one of joy, and that is about to hurt and be very, very painful. So basically, let's assume the tectonic plates of the Earth are shifting, and natural disaster looms. If you're in a high vibratory state, and you allow your inner guidance to move you and to maneuver you, you will always be right at the right place at the right time. And they gave some really extreme examples, but they said, even if you have nothing but yourself, you don't need anything, you just need your guidance. You don't need food, you don't need shelter, you don't need money, you don't need water, you don't need any kind of supplies. They will literally materialize. Like, they will just, because you're following your guidance, they will just show up. As you're hungry, someone will just walk by and give you maybe, I don't know, a meatloaf or a turkey leg, like some, medieval king. And you'll just be exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there. You'll always have a place to rest your head, water to drink, good company. So if you can do that in the most extreme circumstances, then in very mild ones, such as a beautiful day like this in the nature that I love so much, just before winter hits. Actually, winter's beautiful. I love winter. It's just really cold where I live. Then you're just going to find joy, because that is your vibration. There's always going to be somebody there, and you're going to give them joy, and they're going to give you joy, and it's just going to be this reciprocal manifestation. So the moral of the story is this: whatever you're living through, there's nothing that you can't change. Nobody was born wrong. Nobody was born broken or, in problematic circumstances. I know, like, on the external, of course, you could be born to abusive people or something like that, or, very, very extreme neglect, but you can always come out of it. and the greater the challenge, the greater the joy once it's overcome. So absolutely anything is possible, and they stress this, and they give they answer everybody's questions. They've never shied away from a question. Some of them have been really, really extreme, really painful to even listen to, but they make sense of everything beautifully. When you understand that your energy does not know any limits, there's no cap. It goes everywhere, flows everywhere. Time and space mean nothing. People can just come to you, and they can flow through you. You can channel them. You see this all the time with people who are very, not even spiritual, just creative. If they're acting, they're usually channeling. If they're musicians, they just kind of get lost. If people who paint can oftentimes channel. Like my sister's very creative. She's very visually creative. So she just kind of loses sense of space and time for 4 hours. I'm like, aren't you hungry? She's like, no, I don't feel anything. She's not even thirsty. She loses sense of her whereabouts because she's in that state. So if you can find something that you love so much and flow that energy through yourself and to yourself and then out towards others, you will always have good timing. And when you leverage energy, absolutely anything is possible. You can bounce back from injury, bounce back from dire financial circumstances, a broken heart. And oftentimes, there's no shortage of stories, certainly in my life, that I've seen people be heartbroken for a month, only to turn around and see that the love of their life was standing there the whole time, and 2 months later they're pregnant and married to somebody they just met like 8 weeks ago. So it happens all the time. So it can happen to you, but you have to let it in. So, the premise of their teaching is law of attraction, but more so, it only works if you allow it. So I wouldn't even say that you focus on attracting something, because you already know what you want. You just have to let it in. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time with part 2. I love you all. Bye-bye.